Up next, it's the Soundcheck Podcast. Please hold. Your ears are very important to us. Please hold on, and our program will begin shortly. The Soundcheck Podcast is coming up. Please continue to hold. Keep up with the Soundcheck Podcast and everything that's happening in the New Sounds empire. Just go to newsounds.org and follow us on social media. All of the icons are in the top right corner of the page. All of our other musicians are currently playing for other customers. Please stay with us, and someone will play for you in just a moment. From newsounds.org, welcome to another live in-studio performance in the series we call the Soundcheck Podcast. Streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, I'm John Schaefer. The Hypnotic Brass Ensemble earned its reputation the old-fashioned way. They earned it by playing live on the streets in their native Chicago and then here in New York, but also playing on some of the world's biggest stages, from Coachella to Carnegie Hall. At the heart of the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble are 7 brass players. They're all brothers, and they've collaborated with everyone from Snoop Dogg to Damon Albarn to their father, the late jazz great Phil Curran. The Hypnotic Brass Ensemble has pretty well filled our studio today, and they're going to start us off with a live performance of a piece called Menage. That is the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble live here in our new sound studio on this edition of the Soundcheck Podcast, and a live performance of a piece called Menage. So it's a 7-piece brass band and a 3-piece rhythm section filling the studio. I'll introduce you to the full band momentarily, but first, Huda is one of the 4 trumpeters in the ensemble. When that song starts, there's like one big chord that just kind of announces the brass section. That's really well done. Who wrote that piece?
It's a collective of a few of us. The brother Clef started the song. We was in the studio one day just writing music, and we started collaborating. I think he did a lot of the lower parts, and I did like the trumpet parts with help from Yosh and Smooth.
So is that how composition in this band generally works? Is a bunch of you just kind of working stuff out?
Yeah, we have a few ways that we do it. One of them is a bunch of debating. Another way is someone takes their time and writes the music, and hopefully that everybody likes the song, and they present it, and we agree on it, probably hypnotize it a little bit. Change it.
Now, what does that mean?
Hypnotize it is when, like, we might have heard you say you wrote it this way, but the way we felt it is this way. So it's hypnotized. Like, one of the things that our music, it has to have something that we all agree. You know, if we all agree on the song, then you guys hear the song.
Now, I am also from a big family. I have 8 brothers and sisters.
Okay.
And getting all of us to agree on anything is a fool's errand.
Yeah, pretty much take
How do you have any music at all?
Well, I mean, luckily we've been blessed to come from a musical family. Our father and our mothers used to, drill it in us from a young age. So by the time we became adults and became old enough to write our own music. See, the thing is, once we started writing our own music, then we found a new love for music.
Well, that's very interesting you should say that, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys is, you grew up, Phil Caron, your dad, known for playing in some of the most formative records of Sun Ra's career with the orchestra, helping to found AACM out in Chicago, which is still going strong. When you grow up where music is kind of like an expected part of your daily routine, how do you then kind of find a way of falling in love with something that has,
Well, like I said, like it's like you see people with children, and then it's one thing to have your own child. Like, we played our parents or our father's music all our life, and that was work. But once we start writing our own music, then it's like you have a different enthusiasm for presenting your music.
We never really wanted to play our father's music anyway.
Yeah.
Because we was from the 80s, the hip hop generation.
Right.
We wanted to do something hip hop. So even, like 91 with the Phil Caron Youth Ensemble, he let us create our own music at a very young age. So by the time we got old enough to really present our music to people, I mean, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. So why don't I could do this, but Huda, why don't you introduce your brothers and the rest of the band for the folks who are watching?
Okay, so here on my left is Tariq, a.k.a. Smooth. Next is Jafar, a.k.a. Yosh. Next to him is Amar, a.k.a. Baji. Next to him is Saif, a.k.a. Sid. Saber, a.k.a. Clef.
Whom we just heard from.
And Atama, a.k.a. Rocco. We have Kevin Voera over there, and then we have Hash
on guitar,
on the, bass, and Jack Carter on the drums.
All right. Now,
I myself is Huda.
Right. A.K.A. Gabriel.
A.K.a. Gabriel.
Gabriel. Okay.
Yes. The original pronunciation in the Eastern cultures, A's is Ah.
Okay.
So Gabriel.
So lots of family names that have that kind of Eastern
see, our father was an astronomer, so a lot of us have, like, Saif is one of the stars in the constellation Orion. He put a lot of thought and prayer and energy into naming us. He wanted us to have names with power and meaning.
Right. And he was associated with that kind of spiritual jazz.
Absolutely. He was part of the board at the Atlas Planetarium in Chicago for many years. Absolutely. Definitely part of the African Skies exhibit that went on from the 90s into the 2000s.
He scored the African Skies presentation at the Atlas Planetarium in the early 90s. He's also the lead trumpet for Sun Ra in late 50s, early 1960s.
Right, on some of those classic Angels and Demons
Fate in
at
a Pleasant Moon.
Right, yeah, all that stuff. So there's the spiritual side of jazz, and then there's the kind of dance, which is spirited, and you guys seem to have, roots in both.
Our father taught us music has three components: sound, rhythm, and form. We named one of our albums "Sound, Rhythm, and Form" basically off of that. And when you have that, like most people say music is a universal language, but then we get caught into like what genre. Like Hypnotic, we're not genre restricted. We like to just let the spirit or just the energy of the music write itself, and it comes out however it comes.
So that piece, Minaj, it just needed to take a quick detour to Jamaica at some point.
Absolutely.
So now you guys are playing at the Blue Note.
Blue Note, yes.
Residency.
Yes.
Through Sunday night, two shows a night at the famous.
Tonight.
Yeah, starting tonight at the famous jazz club here in New York. There hasn't been a full-length record for, a year and a half or so from you guys, but you've been busy. I mean, there's a new song out called Motivation that you did with Snoop Dogg.
Oh, yeah.
What was that done? Was that specifically done for ESPN?
So the way that happened was there's a producer called Ben Billions. He has been a fan of ours for some years, and he gave the song to Snoop a few years ago, and Snoop finally got around to recording it, and
he finally got motivated.
The song, the song is actually a sample of our song "Navigator" off of our Fly album. So he just took the track, did his producer thing to it and gave it to Snoop. And then they called us after they had already started talking to ESPN about the license situation.
Okay. But you guys didn't have to, go back in and recut your parts or anything like that.
No.
It's not the first kind of high visibility that the band has had, because in the Hunger Games, the song you're going to do next appears.
War, yes.
What was that like?
It was funny. So we were in Ireland.
They didn't give us nothing for part one, man.
We was in Ireland, and we was doing some concerts with Damon Albarn. Flea was on tour from the Red Hot Chili Peppers with us, and he was telling us about Woody Harrelson. And he's like, he plays chess with Woody Harrelson all the time. Woody Harrelson would like us, and we was like, yeah, we like Woody from Cheers and all the movies that he's done, Natural Born Killers, and
right.
So we get the call. I personally hadn't read the books or anything, but because he was in the movie, he was like, yeah, let's go ahead and give it a try, not knowing that it was the blockbuster success that it was going to be. And this was like 2 weeks before they had released it. So they had us in mind before they called us and wrote the score and had the movie complete. So we could have backed out of it, and then they would have had to find something else to put there. But luckily we didn't. Luckily Woody Harrelson was in the movie, and, the rest is history.
Yeah. So let's hear a performance of the song, which does appear in the Hunger Games, and this is a live version of it from the band that wrote it, the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble. That's the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble live here in our studio, and a song called War. It appeared in the Hunger Games, but first was a song from one of the albums by the band. 4 trumpets, 2 trombones. Rocco, you play an instrument called the baritone horn. That's a quote-unquote band instrument, right?
Yeah, it's more of a marching baritone. But euphonium is like a concert instrument too, so it's different types of baritones.
Right, but a euphonium would be bigger, right?
Yeah, it still produces the same sound, but it's kind of like a blend of a trombone and a trumpet together.
But it looks almost like a stretched out French horn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's closer. It looks closer to a French horn than anything.
Yeah. And then there's, of course, the rhythm section of guitar, bass, and drums. But Huda, before you guys added drums to the band, I mean, most brass bands have a tradition of being in motion. They're marching bands, or they play at weddings and funerals and cultures around the world and stuff like that. And you guys did that too,
You
right?
know, the funny thing about us is when we named ourselves, we had no clue about there being a brass culture.
We were trying to redefine it.
Sid, come closer to
We
this.
saw that we had a bunch of horns in the band, so we know they're brass instruments, so that's how we got brass.
Yeah, we really got our main start as Hypnotic Brass Ensemble about 2001, 2000 we put out our record. It wasn't really a popular genre. It's way bigger, way more familiar now. We were trying to redefine it, make it cool, take away all the limitations people had in it. People thought, all right, you need the snare. You can't have rhythm. You need a tuba. These certain things in music is not about any type of limitation. So we put brass in our name to respect the culture before us and to try to change it over, but to exemplify how different than all of those cultures are. You can name about 100 differences than Hypnotic and the average brass New Orleans style. Because a lot of people don't know this, I have to point out. In jazz and in music, there was always a New Orleans style we're always familiar with.
Right.
There was a Mississippi style we're familiar with, more from blues, but it eventually turned into jazz. There's a Chicago style of horn playing. Earth, Wind, and Fire and them guys came out of there. A lot of the horn players.
Well, now your dad worked with Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah, when they were still the Pharaohs.
Yeah.
So it's a Chicago sound, and we were also reclaiming Chicago sound and trying to make that popular as New Orleans brass.
Yeah. Well, now, were you guys aware of bands like Rebirth in New Orleans who were trying, as far back as the 80s
That music.
to do something?
Tower Power.
Tower Power,
Yeah,
of
people
course.
used to always compare us to those guys when we first started playing. We used to actually play one of their songs.
Tower Power?
I
Or
think it was Chicago?
We played a Chicago tune and another one. Which Power Tower tune? We did play a Power Tower one, but Chicago
Well,
one was running
yeah, so the point is that, you guys were aware of that. Now, as you've toured the world, have you come in contact with, like, Balkan brass bands and South Asian brass bands and East African?
Claimed his grandfather wrote our song. Like, my grandfather wrote that song. We're like, no, he did not. Y'all remember that?
We actually have a few student bands in different countries that have picked up our songs and played them, like the teachers, the directors of the music programs in different countries. Ireland, Ukraine, Brazil. It's a few different places where the kids now play our songs in their school criteria.
Wow. Part of
Even what is it, Aztec College? Which one? Even American college bands march and play our songs on the field. So it's
So, like at halftime, you'll see a marching band come out and you'll recognize one of your own songs. Well, there are so many. I mean, I think, Sid, you mentioned all these different cultures. There are, Huda, so many different brass band traditions, and it seems like that might be kind of nourishing for you guys as you travel around. You'd be able to pick stuff up here and there. Has that happened?
It allows us to identify with the different cultures a little better, especially when they can see something that they're familiar with, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Balkan brass band. I think it's La Brass Band. I think their name is. They're huge. You got about 15, 20,000 people rocking to this brass music, and they're young, from 15 to 25. And So, I mean, we were largely influenced by a lot of that music, going to Germany, going to Eastern European countries and seeing them, how they still keep the brass music alive in their culture.
Well, then that's the dance music too. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it
like
is. That's what I mean.
it's like serious dance music.
And we continue that culture definitely.
Yeah.
The ability for the band to be the DJ.
Well, now it's interesting to think of. There's a rapper who I've liked for a long time. He's not famous, but a guy named Mr. Liff. Who came originally from Barbados, and now he's, I think, based in Philly. But he did a whole record last year with Brass Menagerie, which is a Balkan brass band from the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. So the idea that these worlds are coming together.
When we started in 2001, we started in 1999, but in 2001, we didn't see brass everywhere. We didn't see it in a lot of places. So one of our predominant mission statements, our goals, was to make brass cool.
Yeah.
And here, 2019, it's super cool. You have an entire genre dedicated to brass music.
Absolutely,
That's what we
and you do have rappers. Snoop Dogg sampling you guys and all that kind of stuff. We're speaking with the members of the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble. They're playing at the Blue Note, 2 shows each night, tonight through Sunday. So you have plenty of chances to see them in action. And on a cold winter's night, there were a few things I could think of that would heat up a room faster than a 10-piece brass band with rhythm section. Huda, tell me what this next song title, ACF, means.
Well, it's a couple of things. We connected fashion-wise with these guys out of Switzerland. Sweden, rather. ACF, that's a clothing label. Art comes first. And they have a similar background as us. Like, we were taught by our father, and they were taught tailoring by their fathers. So of kindred spirits, we decided to write a song pretty much in ode to them. They have a West African background, and we're big Fela Kuti Afrobeat fans. So it was just fitting, and the song is ACF.
All right.
Before we start, John,
Yes, Rocco.
I noticed you brought up the upcoming work, our latest album, and kind of straight away from it, I'd just like to take this time to say that this song is also on this song and the song that we played then, Menage.
Yeah.
They're both on the upcoming album. Not entitled yet. It's good. I couldn't remember the name. 'Cause it's like it's a big gumbo stew. We stirring it. We still mixing up the flavors. But the latest album will be out soon. So.
All right. Keep Big Gumbo Stew in mind for a possible title. That's not too bad. Let's hear the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble in a live performance here in our studio of ACF. The Hypnotic Brass Ensemble live here in our studio with a song called ACF, Art Comes First, which will eventually make its way onto the next record by the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble. I mentioned earlier their last record, Book of Sound, came out in 2017, so it's about time that you guys had something new to share with us. And
We're letting the label choose.
so Menage, which was the first song, will also be on the new record. Of course, there's the residency at the Blue Note here in New York. 2 shows a night, tonight through Sunday. Is the record done? Is it essentially?
We're actually waiting on the features that we have. This is the first time that we're doing features on our album. So yeah, once the features are done, then we'll finalize.
Any names you can share?
No, we're not going to name them right now.
Okay.
It's a bit of a surprise.
I had to ask. All right. So we'll look for that later on in the year. In the meantime, guys, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming in and playing
having
for
us,
us.
man. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks
Great
a lot.
to meet you, John.
This is Soundcheck.